That 70's Remodel, a Build Original series, is brought to you by Huber Engineered Woods.
This home started with all the usual 1970s problems. Dated design, poor insulation, and inefficient materials that just couldn't keep up with today's standards. But this isn't just a cosmetic update, it's a full performance overhaul, and that starts with the building envelope. Upgrading the enclosure to Zip System R sheeting helped us boost the home's thermal performance while streamlining our install. It gave us a continuous exterior insulation and a built-in water-resistant barrier all in one step. In Utah's variable climate, we rely on Zip System products for both remodels and new builds. They help us manage moisture, air leakage, and insulation without overcomplicating the wall assembly. With Zip System and AdvantTech, we get fewer steps, faster installation, and job site durability that holds up even when the weather doesn't cooperate. These are trusted brands among top builders for a reason: reliability, performance, and ease of use on real-world job sites. Learn more and check out available rebates at huberwood.com. Hey guys, Stephanie Daly with Stephen Daly Construction. Today we are back at that 70's Remodel for episode number 4, all about framing. As you guys know, if you've been following this project, we are doing a full exterior renovation here on that 70's Remodel while trying not to touch the inside of the home. So we've actually stripped the exterior, we've come through, we did exterior closed cell spray foam, and now we are working on sheeting the walls. We've chosen to use Zip R6 to sheet the walls on this house. This is actually the first time we've got the opportunity to use Zip R in our climate, or I guess in our region. We have a seismic zone here in Utah that doesn't allow for us to use this product that often. So we are super excited to get to use this on this job. So a few things I want to talk about, because when you're doing a remodel or a renovation, there are some things that you can fix and there are some things that you need to work with. And we can't always come through and fix absolutely everything on this house and make it as perfect as a new construction job that we would originally do from the start. So some of those challenges you just have to learn to live with. But let's talk through some of those. This house had floor trusses with a panelized wall system built above it. And this panelized wall system wasn't necessarily built for this house. It looked very much like they sent out a bunch of 8-foot panels and they cut them to fit to make it work on this home. So little scabbed together in the first place. You can see we have a little about 8-inch overhang of the upper level. The upper level is actually cantilevering out around the entire home, about 8 inches, which is a little odd. But that floor system is also built with floor trusses with the panelized walls above it. So as we're coming through trying to install this new Zip R6 sheeting, some of the problems we ran into are just unevenness, things not being plumb, things not lining up, having some things kind of push out. There's only so much you can work with. So we've had our framers come through and actually start sheeting this house from the foundation wall up. The reason being is the majority of our imperfections or the problems we were facing were where the floor trusses met the panelized wall system. They didn't necessarily line up. So one tended to be a little more proud than the other. And so by starting to sheet on the bottom and moving our way up, we could try and avoid any real noticeable or drastic change or bulge in the sheeting itself. So we went through after we had stripped the house and replaced a bunch of lumber like you saw in earlier episodes, things that had termite damage, water damage, carpenter ant damage, and replace that with new lumber. But we can't build the entire structure again. And part of the problem too is it's a remodel on a budget. So we replaced everything we could, but some of that stuff, some of the old lumber, some of the things not lining up, that's just stuff that you got to deal with. So by sheeting at the bottom, we were able to kind of hide some of those imperfections. A few other weird things. The windowsills on this house, when we started doing demolition, we tore the existing windows out because we were going to replace them with a little bit better product. The windowsills had tile originally on them. and they had MDF carpentry trim work over the top of the tile. So we had to go through and demo that. When the framers were coming in, we actually didn't notice that some of the windows had that tile. Bedrooms, we kind of assumed it was just bathrooms and kitchens, but these upper floor bedroom windows actually had the same problem. So we're gonna have to come through now at this point and demo the tile and that sill product, and probably just take a router and clean up the window opening, the sheeting on the outside of the window opening, just so that you can make it work. Like I said, remodels, you always run into weird little challenging things that sometimes you can make them work, sometimes you just kind of have to deal with how they are. As we were installing this Zip R product, because this is our first time installing it, we actually got on Huber's website to find out their instructions for install. And I've seen a few people on Instagram install this sheeting in a few different ways. Some people actually rip the foam off the back side of, say, this sheet and overlap it so the corner just has the two pieces of zip, the two green zip panels touching each other. Huber's website actually has this as an example where you just butt the two together. We will have a tape line that'll come around the corner and cover that exposed foam corner, but we've installed it per Huber's recommendations. So this has been a really great product. I want to walk you around the house and show you a few other things that we've had to do to adjust framing to make it work for this particular remodel. Let's go to the other side. All right, we're here on the garage side of the house, and on the east and west sides of this house, there actually aren't any overhangs on the roof. By adding the Zip R panels, we actually increased the thickness of the walls by 1 inch. So we had to do a little bit of adjusting to make this work. These walls will have stucco. So what we've done is we actually added a 2x4 fascia for the Zip R6 to butt and plane up with. And then over the top, we added a piece of 2x6, and that was so that we had something we could wrap in our metal fascia material and also have a place to put some flashing to be able to get water out and around the stucco instead of behind it. So a few little quirky things. Normally here in Utah, we always have overhangs on houses. It's actually becoming more of a trend that you don't on new homes, which is interesting. I recommend you always have overhangs. Just protects you from water. It gets water away from the house, and as we know, water is the #1 killer of buildings. So you can see here in the background that fascia, that 2x6 fascia that we added over the top, and that just gave us a nice place to be able to flush and also to be able to have the stucco butt up into. A few other interesting things on this house. This house used to have brick, so we actually have a 4-inch brick ledge here on the bottom, and we are installing a thin cut cultured stone, not a brick. So we're gonna have to come through and flash this lower portion a little uniquely. So I think what we're gonna do very first is we'll come through and tape off and use a liquid flash to just take care of that joint where the sheeting meets the foundation wall. And then we'll probably bend a piece of metal like a drip edge that we can attach to the Zip R. Then we can attach our stone over the top of that. That'll just help get the water out and off of the brick ledge. Again, short of like reframing walls, moving things, adding a furred wall to the outside, there's lots of options, but this was the most cost-effective way for us to do that. We're still gonna make sure that we get the water out and away from the house because that's our #1 priority. But the way this is built, this should last at least another 50 years, if not longer. We wanna see these houses continue to stay and live their full life potential. So, pretty cool. Let's go into the garage. I wanna show you how this building was actually framed originally and some of the challenges that we ran into from that perspective. Let's go this way. Welcome into the garage. So we're actually going to end up coming through and finishing this entire space, but this is a really great place to be able to show you some of those framing details of things that we needed to do in order to make this work. So as you're doing a remodel, before you go through and do all your spray foam, installing blocking, you can see this side's got it along the bottom. A blocking piece for the top or bottom of these Zip R sheets to be able to nail to is important. These walls, like I said, are a really odd height. The interior of the home doesn't actually have a full 96-inch ceiling height. It's like 93 and 1/8. It's a really weird height. So this was built with some weird panelized systems. So come through, install your blocking so that you actually have something for your sheets to nail to. Priority one. We actually forgot to do that in a portion before they sprayed the foam, so we ended up having to chisel some of that out to take care of it. So don't forget to include the blocking in these old walls. A lot of times they'll look a lot like these do, where there's no fire blocking, no nothing. So that's something I would always recommend. You can see we have a piece of the sheeting that we've left off for now. That's because we're gonna come through and replace the electrical service to the house. As we started doing construction, just like any remodel, they tend to grow. And this homeowner realized that they didn't have air conditioning on the main floor or the basement. You don't necessarily need it here in Utah in the basement because it'll stay fairly cool. It's entirely underground. But we decided to add air conditioning, which meant we started looking into furnaces and realized that they were kind of a hodgepodge mess. So we decided to replace the entire HVAC system. Now, in the process of doing that, we were trying to find power to get power over to the side of the house for the 2 condensers, and realized that the only air conditioning unit that's currently on the home has power coming from the exterior panel that's been illegally tapped. So we are gonna take care of that because that's not something we're just gonna leave. So we've decided to actually come in and replace the service. We'll put a 200 amp service on the house, and we will have 2 breakers at the service panel that will do the condensers on the other side of the house. So that's the reason that sheet is not installed yet. A couple other kind of quirky things about this project. You can see there's kind of a framed door opening here that they didn't use. The door into the house is just a few feet further down their wall. Again, I think this was just kind of a hodgepodge mix of panelized systems. There are some things in the existing framing that we would absolutely not do today. There are things that I wouldn't ever recommend, but you work with them, and the structural integrity of it is fine. It's just kind of weird how they put it together. This is exactly that situation that I was talking about on the back of the home, where the floor trusses and the wall above don't line up. So sheeting that is a little bit of a challenge. Just remember, when you're doing these remodels, it's not gonna be as perfect as your new construction home, but it's gonna be 10,000 times better than what it was before. So we just kind of work with those things and do the best you can. You can't come through and reframe the whole house, which I had to tell myself a lot when starting remodels, because there are just a lot of things you're gonna find when you demo into a house that you would never do in your own career. So you just learn to work around those things. You can see behind me, these are some of the areas that we came through and did new framing. You can see the old studs, the original studs, and then this is new lumber. So we came through and did some framing changes and tore out a bunch of rotten wood, damaged wood, and replaced it so that we had better structural integrity. That's actually part of the exterior fireplace that goes up about 20 feet, and it had some really rotten lumber on it, so we went through and replaced that as much as possible. This house overall has some really good framing to it. I'm actually quite impressed. I was not expecting to find floor trusses in a house from the 70s, so that was a cool find and something really unique. But again, older houses were just built differently than they're built today, so some of this stuff you learn to work with. Some of the pieces you just have to tear it out and replace it, like the dryer vent in this house. So they had the dryer vent venting directly into the garage, which is a huge no-no. So we had to find a way to take that and get it outside. Let's walk over to the other side of the garage. I'm gonna show you what we decided to do and what framing changes our framer did to help us get there. So there is that door opening in its actual location, but kind of weird that this wall has 2 framed openings for that. So the laundry room is directly on the other side of this wall. At some point when they added a washer and dryer, they just vented it directly into the garage, which you know we can't do. So we had the framer come through and add just a 2x6 wall here. Still need to get it finished. We were waiting on a treated plate that just got delivered. This vent will turn and go up and through this chase and out the roof. One of the big things for me is always trying to conceal this stuff as much as possible, but more or less to protect it. I didn't really want to just turn that vent and have it exposed here in the room for future use. Kids, you know, you're gonna pile stuff up here. that would get damaged and broken. So we just furred out a great little 2x6 wall that pipe has enough room to turn and go up and out through the attic. But a few things to notice, and always remember when you're doing framing changes, is to include the blocking for drywall. They need to be able to have a place for those drywall pieces to attach. That's exactly what the guys have done up here at the top. And also here along this exterior wall. We did not change the exterior framing, but they did come through and add some blocking in so that we have a place to attach stuff to. I want to take you guys out front, give you a little update of how the framing is going there. We are probably only 4 days away from being done installing this Zip R. And from there, we're going to start doing our waterproofing, flashing, and taping. Our plan here is to use a combination of zip tape and zip liquid flash, and we'll give you a whole episode about the flashing and water management. But let's go out front and I'll give you a final update on the framing. All right, as you can see, we're not completely finished with sheeting the outside of this house. We have a little bit left on the upper level that we need to do today. We have framed over, just sheeted over the exterior openings, window and door openings on the main level to try and protect the house. So that's exactly what we've got the OSB up for today. But we've been able to kind of come through and help fix or replace some of the things that were done on the original construction that weren't really the most stable or up to par. The beams you can see overhead here on the front porch were just toe-nailed into the wall behind. We came through and added some different hangers to try and help support those. We also have the Zip R sheeting, which is kind of butted up to the bottom of these beams now, which adds just a little bit of extra help and support there. But these were just floating in midair. Another thing, all of these original fascia boards that we came through and replaced were also just floating. They only had blocking about once every 10 feet along the front here. So the guys came in and added a bunch of blocking for nailers to be able to attach that to. This will make the fascia on this house last much longer than it did originally. We had some issues with drooping and water damage and just the fascia overall not being in a great shape. So we chose to come through and replace that. A few things that I wish we could do differently on this particular project, or things that I wish we would have added. The front porch roof framing over here is not the best. I have a really strong inclination that this front porch was added way late down the line in construction, and this is what tells me that I'm right with that. So as we've been doing demolition, we realized that the brick that was on the exterior of the home actually continues behind this front porch. And down here, you can even see there's kind of a recess where the brick was sitting in. That tells me that the house got the entire exterior cladding before this front porch was poured. I kind of believe that this front porch was an addition because of that. What also tells me it was an addition is this particular beam overhead. It was mostly floating, not supported on anything. The only thing that was tucked up underneath it was that brick veneer. So I do believe that this front porch was added on later. The connection to the house back here was non-existent. Like I said, it just had a few toenails that went into the framing itself, but the beam was actually cut 2 inches short from the wall. So that is kind of a telltale sign for me. And then last would be the trusses. The trusses were actually cut short and didn't actually attach to the wall at all. The upper cord of the truss had a few toenails that went into the sheeting that was up above, but that was about it. So the framing on this front porch, we came through, like I said, added hangers, added as much support as possible, and tried to really fix this up and beef it up. It's been here since the 70s, so clearly it's fine, but the way this was framed and built was not my favorite. So one of the changes, I guess, if I could say something I would have added to this particular project, would have been to tear the front porch off and redo it. I do not love the thought that there is brick behind these front porch concrete steps. The same issue happened on the back of the home. The brick got installed and then they poured concrete steps up to the brick. That is where the majority of our water and termite damage was found, was right behind where that detail had happened. So I don't love that. I wish that we could actually tear that off and redo it. So that's a challenge. That's something that we're actually going to have to work through with our mason, because I kind of feel like this little recess that's tucked back in here needs to be filled with concrete and have the stone die down to something that is properly flashed and has good water management, but this is just overall kind of one of those things that you have to outweigh the cost worth what you're actually going to do and make sure that it works for you and your client and your budget. This particular one did not. So guys, thank you so much for staying around and watching that 70s remodel. There's tons of quirky, weird things that we're finding on this job, and I want to make sure to give you all of the information and all of the ups and downs and roller coasters of a renovation or remodel. This is becoming more and more common in our market, I think in many markets, but here in the Greater Salt Lake, we have ran out of land, so remodeling is kind of your best bet. So I just want to take you along and show you the entire journey. Thank you so much for watching all the way through episode 4. Stay tuned because there's going to be a ton more. You can follow me on Instagram or TikTok for more updates. That's at Stephanie Builds It. And we'll see you next time on The Build Show.